to Leading for Life Stories Season 3. I'm Bob Judson, I'm the host for this podcast, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you here joining me. Regardless of whether you're a seasoned listener who's been with me since the beginning, or whether you've just dropped in for the occasional episode, I really hope you enjoy the mix of content that I provide, the personal stories, the thematic episodes, and the guests that I have on the show. And I hope you find it all interesting and at least some of it useful. And without further ado, let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final episode of 2025 and the end of Season 3 of Leading for Life Stories. I'm frankly amazed that we've got to Season 3 and the end of it and 126 episodes, which this one will be. When I started this back in August 2023, did I think it would go on so long and actually do so well? No, I wasn't at all confident of that. So I'm delighted it has. And as I've done the last couple of years, what I thought I'd do is finish the year and finish the season with a bit of a review of the year from the podcast point of view and what we've covered, and a little bit of a look forward into 2026, because I think that's relevant as well in terms of doing that. So I'll keep it quite short. I don't want to make it a particularly prolonged episode, because I'm sure at this time of year you've got many better things to do than listen to me or watch me anyway. But nonetheless, let's give it a go. Season 3, 52 episodes, as you'd expect, one every week of the year, and it's continuing that unbroken theme. I've never missed a week since we started back in 2023. And I'm pretty proud of that, actually. That's not an inconsequential thing to keep that rhythm up, and it certainly takes a bit of planning and a bit of thought to do that. But it's been successful. This year, 15 personal stories that have been there, 11 thematic episodes, 26 guest episodes. And just to dwell on each of those areas just a little bit in a bit more detail, the personal stories have taken me from the end of my time commanding Royal Air Force Coningsby through to almost the end of my time in the RAF. And I'm sure as we get into 2026, it will conclude the time I had in the RAF. Because I'm now up to doing some episodes around my time as Assistant Chief Defence Staff Operations. In between the Coningsby and ACDS Ops bit was a wealth of stuff. I spent time in America, in the Pentagon. I spent time in Afghanistan on the biggest leadership challenge of my life, and I talk about that in a number of different episodes as I've gone through. And that was a particularly important chapter for me in terms of what I do now, because an awful lot of my leadership approach, and many of my stories, I suppose, come from that time, because it was huge, and it was a major opportunity to really develop my own leadership skills, and I took it in that respect as well, and I think that's been very beneficial for me. So lots of stuff in the personal stories side, and I hope that's of interest to many of you. I know from feedback that a lot of people like the personal stories, and they value what they get from that. I try to share a fair bit of myself in doing that as well, and sometimes that's, I guess, a bit cathartic for me, but also sometimes a bit uncomfortable for me too. It's definitely quite exposing in the way that I do that. But I genuinely believe that people learn as much, if not more, from things that have gone wrong for people and where they've faced real challenges, personal challenges or work challenges. And so that's why I'm quite honest in what I say in those episodes. The 11 thematic episodes have been very diverse in what I've covered as well. I mean, I've covered everything from is your glass half full or half empty, flexibility, mentoring and coaching, transition, that whole, for me, the move out of the military into the civilian world. But frankly, that's just as applicable to anybody moving from any major role where they've been there a long time to go and do something different. It is a big challenge to deal with that, and so inevitably, it requires a bit of thought. It requires some preparation, and again, what I try to share in that kind of episode is where did I take missteps, if you like? Where are the pitfalls that I hopefully can give you some guidance to avoid, and equally some of the approaches I took that worked, and how I got through that that kind of challenging environment. Geopolitics and resilience, I think, never more pertinent than now, really, in terms of what's going on in the world. The world is a turbulent and challenging place, and therefore quite unnerving for an awful lot of people, unsettling with all sorts of things, whether it's wars and challenges in terms of political confrontation, in individual states, and challenges with big alliances, through to actually the growth of AI and the things that actually threaten people there in terms of the challenge side of that rather than necessarily the opportunity side of it. So I think personal resilience and societal resilience are two really, really important features that I'm sure will continue to pop up over the upcoming episodes as well, because it's there's never we can't ever do enough, I think, to be more resilient individually or societally, and we're definitely not in the right place right now, in my view, and I think there's work to do to get that right. Altruism, politeness, good behavior, and some of these kind of episodes fell from things that have happened to me. And I remember that doing that episode was on the back of some stuff where I just thought, no, this is worth talking about, because it is an area where I think, again, we are to some extent losing our way a little bit, and just thinking about how to be really unselfish, how to actually be polite to people, how to actually think about the kind of behavior, the standard you want to set. If you're a leader, what kind of standard are you setting for the people that are working for you? And that's not just your kind of stated visible position. It's what you're doing that you don't even think about, your unconscious acts that people will look at and people will watch and people will see, and thinking about how you actually get through that process by making sure you're setting the right example, that you want people to follow, and you're not tripping over yourself by doing things that are either compromising your own value set inadvertently, or again leading people into a place where they will think it's okay to do something that actually you really don't think is okay, but you just haven't appreciated that they've seen you do something that they think they can take to maybe the next level, or just take it in a slightly different direction. And that can be a problem. So thinking about your behavior, your example, is where I was with some of that. And that took me into authenticity and leadership traits, and what's important and what's not important, and where I think there are some real things to be thought about and things to work on. From a leadership point of view, when I talk about leadership to people, I inevitably talk about quite a lot of different leadership traits, and pretty much nobody has a comprehensive set of everything you could ever argue would be a good thing to have as a leader. You'll have strong suits and you'll have weaker suits, and you need to think about, where are my weaker ones and what do I need to do to improve those, and which ones do I want to focus on. And so that's the kind of stuff that I was getting to in that. I did an episode on remembrance, very much around Remembrance Day in the UK, because it was poignant for me, because I would normally march at the cenotaph. I wasn't able to do that this year, and I think it's really important to reflect and think back on some of those things. So that was, again, quite a personal episode that had a thematic basis to it. Cultural awareness, again, on the back of coming back from a job in Riyadh. Gave me sort of food for thought to think about talking about cultural awareness and the importance of it, and being sharper in your own thinking around what you can do to make sure you're performing at your absolute best in terms of the way you operate with with any organization, frankly, wherever it is, and the people within it, who will almost by definition in this day and age be diverse. So ensuring you're, being fully cognizant of that, and thinking about how you do your best, I think is really, really important. So that was that. And then the very final thematic episode, apart from this one, was all about purpose, and the importance of thinking about what your purpose is, because fundamentally for me, that is what gets you out of bed in the morning. If you haven't got that right, you're going to find it increasingly difficult to look yourself in the mirror and be happy with what you do. So, hence the reason for talking about it a little bit, and hopefully getting you, if you're listening or watching the episode, to think about it a bit as well. So those were the themes that I went through. But 26 guest episodes, and I've increasingly, as not least as my personal stories obviously diminish in number because I'm getting towards the end of my career, then thinking about those guests and how I bring the guests into play is increasingly important. And I look across the diversity of guests. It's very easy to get to the end of a year and have a review of what I've actually done and think, wow, I mean, just the variation is enormous. And I'm very privileged that so many people have very happily come on the podcast and given their time, and we've had great conversations, which I think almost all of them are valuable in different ways, to different people. Many of them, will resonate with lots and lots of people. Some will be a bit more specific, perhaps, but they all have great value, no question about it. And I think, if you find yourself looking at a particular one because that individual, or you've worked with that individual or whatever, and you're therefore interested in what they had to say, well, great. But actually then have a look at some of the others, because I think you will take some interesting things from them perhaps you hadn't appreciated. And it's worth just a little bit of a highlight, I think, on the ones that I've done, because just to give a flavour of where they were all coming from, as part of a review. I mean, I started way back in January with Doug Rattray. Doug is the managing director at Fugitives Drift Lodge in South Africa. Hugely impressive backstory in terms of his family and what they're doing out in South Africa as a tourist destination, but in terms of their focus on the local community and how they actually get involved with that on the back of an absolute tragedy, because Doug's father was killed in a botched armed robbery a few years previously, and that obviously still resonates very strongly with the family. And I've been there; it's a fantastic place to go, and it was lovely to kind of kick the year off with a conversation with him. John Peters, former Air Force officer, now running his own consulting business for many years, but a former prisoner of war from Gulf War One, and very well known to many from the pictures that appeared in the papers at that time. A really quite hard-hitting episode about what he experienced while he was a POW, and the treatment he got in captivity, which was, I don't have to issue many trigger warnings on the podcast, but that was definitely one. But at the same time, what he took from it and the kind of post-traumatic growth side, as he talks about on that, was really, really interesting. And I would absolutely recommend that to anybody to think about how you kind of pick yourself up having been properly, knocked down. And that's what people often talk about. But that was a great example of someone that really has done that in an amazing way. Cujo Teschner, American Air Force pilot, former F-15, F-22 pilot, medically discharged from the Air Force after a pretty traumatic cancer diagnosis, which has resulted in a pretty significant life change for him. But now doing similar sorts of stuff to me, to be honest, in the what he does with the VMAX group in the US. And again, brilliant conversation, because of course we had two pilots talking about flying. We've had a few of those this year, and that was great fun anyway. But also Cujo has so many really interesting leadership insights that I just think were really, really good. Rory Underwood, rugby player, former England rugby player, still holds the record for the most tries for England from his time there, and that's stood for a longish time now, as we talked about on the episode. And again, some terrific leadership insights. He's doing this kind of stuff too for a living these days, and and lots of fascinating stuff to say. Howard Burton, friend of mine for many, many years, just recently retired from British Airways as a senior captain on the 777 fleet, talking again about his experiences through Air Force time to airline time, and what he learned from that. And of course, if you're the captain of an airliner, that's not an insignificant leadership role in its own right. You have the whole crew to look after, and obviously what's often forgotten, and again it cropped up on another episode right at the end of the year with Emma Henderson, where we talked about the fact that the captain of an airplane generally, and in the airline industry, you're not working with a composite team that you see all the time. You're picking up a new flight deck crew and a new cabin crew every trip, pretty much, because on the bigger fleets you just don't know these people. So being able to forge and work with a really strong leadership team very early on is very, very important to do that. Russell Wardrop, CEO of KWC Global, a training company that I do work for, and I love working for them. I'm going back there to do some work in Denmark with Deloitte Denmark in February and April next year. And I love working with KWC because they have such a kind of different style in terms of the way they do it. And that episode with Russell was hilarious because he's a very, very charismatic, punchy guy, and you'll see if you watch it, or listen to it, because it was still one that was audio only at that stage. But really great conversation with him. Onyinye Udakporo, who I've known for a long time as well and mentor a little bit. She is an incredibly bright, force of nature individual, very, very entrepreneurial, doing great things in the world already. Already a published author, working with a variety of different companies, particularly focused on neurodiversity because she herself is dyslexic, and doing incredibly well. So once again, really, really interesting insights from someone who's a considerably different age group to many of my guests, because she's really up and coming in that world, and I think definitely worth a listen to. Amy Lane, chance meeting for me. Literally met her on a flight. Never underestimate the value of opportunistic networking. The artistic director for Copenhagen Opera at the moment, and an opera director who's worked all over the world doing all sorts of things. And she was fascinating, really great lady to talk to, and loved the conversation. Francis Chusa, Defense Analysis, editor of Defense Analysis. Again, really interesting. Talked a little bit more, as you'd expect with that kind of conversation, about some of the geopolitical stuff around defense and some of the challenges in that space, rather than necessarily specifically on leadership. But again, really great guy, fascinating conversation, and followed rapidly by Paul Beaver, another very defense-focused author, military historian, tremendously interesting man with a great background. So, again, all fascinating. Jonathan Bowman Perks, the only guest that I've had so far, at least twice on the podcast. Jonathan and I know each other pretty well now from various things, and he was kind enough to feature me in his latest book with a mention in one of the chapters on the back of the podcast I did with him. But we talked about what we're seeing, because we're both doing podcasts, we're both interviewing lots of leaders, we're both doing leadership training and coaching and development, and what we were seeing from those kind of leaders. So that's, again, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's a really, really good episode from that point of view. Tabby Haller-Jordan, fantastic individual, lovely lady with an incredible backstory. Really, really interesting to listen to her insights from being a really senior player on a whole range of different big jobs over many years now. Tom Tugendhat, Member of Parliament for Tunbridge, former military officer as well, who I've known for a long time, former minister in the previous government. And again, really, some great insights from him, great leadership insights, but also just some stuff around the kind of political space that we touch on a bit. A duo with Greg Bagwell and Sean Bell, two very good former Air Force friends of mine, that we had a fantastic discussion, very lively one, with all sorts of stuff around aviation, as you'd expect, and a good deal of banter between the three of us, because Sean was a Harrier pilot, Greg was a Tornado pilot, and obviously I was largely a Jaguar pilot, and then Typhoon at the end, and so we had plenty of banter to share in that. Hetty Barkworth-Nanton, another fabulous episode. She's the chief exec of Ploughshare, but she's also a Pride of Britain award winner. She's done some amazing work in terms of the charitable space, particularly around domestic abuse, and that episode is outstanding. I mean, no question about it. Absolutely outstanding. Well worth listening to. Mark Cheshire, one of my really senior guests, former chief exec of Lloyd's Private Bank. Again, fabulous insights from a very, very senior leader who has got a lot to say, as you'd expect, about leadership, and a lot of experience, and that was terrific. A bit more of a fun one with Jeff Nielsen, who's the host of the Airline Pilot Guy Show, which is a podcast that I listen to quite regularly. And again, he's an ex-Air Force, US Air Force pilot, and then a long-standing 35 years captain with Delta in the US, and has been doing podcasting since really podcasting wasn't a thing. So again, some really interesting insights to get from him around all sorts of things that are there. Peter Sorgenfrey, again, just a LinkedIn kind of connection that we got connected through listening or talking to each other on posts, really, rather than actually talking at all. But we had a brilliant conversation about leadership, because he's very much in that space. He's a serial entrepreneur, serial founder, and we've got so many similar thoughts despite having incredibly different backgrounds. And it was one of those conversations where it could have gone on an awful lot longer than it actually did. Lord Kim Darroch, I've known Kim for a good while, and what a great conversation. I mean, an amazing senior diplomat, finished up his diplomatic career as Her Majesty's ambassador in Washington, D.C., and obviously pretty famously was had to resign over what happened with leaked memos or leaked documents coming from the embassy back to the UK when he was basically doing his job reporting back from the UK, but clearly President Trump in his first term didn't quite see eye to eye with that. But again, some great insights from Kim, not least because of the depth of the wider career and all the things he'd done, not least in Europe, but also more broadly further afield. And huge geopolitical experience. Amazing character to talk to, and a real privilege to have him on. Sally Orange, again, an opposite end of the spectrum in some ways. Ex-army physiotherapist, has faced mental health challenges most of her life and ended up being medically discharged from the military because of it. But now a mental health campaigner who herself also is battling cancer at the moment, but an incredibly, incredibly vivacious and enthusiastic individual that you can't feel, you can't help but come away from it with a sense of optimism, despite all the challenges she's currently facing, to be in a position that she is and to have done some incredible physical challenges as part of her mental health work along the way. And I thought I'd done well with a couple of marathons under my belt and a bunch of half marathons, but Sally's done 87 marathons, and some of those are incredibly impressive ones as well. So listen to that or watch that episode, and you'll see what I mean, because she is a very, very special individual. Lord George Robertson, former Secretary General of NATO and the Secretary of State for Defence in the UK way back in 1997 when Labour came to power in their landslide under Tony Blair. Again, I've known him for a while, but nowhere near as well as some of the others that I've interviewed on the podcast, and it was just fantastic to get such a senior perspective from an individual who is so well versed in these big geopolitical issues at a time when it is so important. And he has met Vladimir Putin on multiple occasions, obviously has quite a lot of perspectives around that, and we talk about all that sort of stuff. So again, brilliant insights and just so fantastic to listen to him. Tammy Barlett, again, totally veering in a different direction. Again, another Air Force pilot, U.S. Air Force pilot, who are these days out doing predominantly pilot training to actually change people's attitude and preparedness for what they do in the flying world. But she's got a very, very interesting flying background herself. Instructor pilot, A-10 pilot, then also a unmanned vehicle, so Reaper and Predator pilot. And again, lots of phenomenal insights from someone who's steeped in this kind of space too. So again, another really good one to listen to. Jonathan Geldart, he's the Director General of the Institute of Directors in the UK, and again, I learned so much from talking to some of these people, and some of it's so surprising. And Jonathan's got some amazing, obviously, leadership experience and what he's doing from his own career background. But the other thing he's done is he's done a serious amount of major kind of expedition work, polar expeditions and big mountain climbing type stuff, and all of that is what he brings out in the podcast. And again, it was just a really amazing set of insights from someone that I really was genuinely surprised by some of the stuff that we ended up discussing, and it was a real privilege to have him on the show. Martin Shaw, my most successful in terms of pure simple downloads, both on YouTube and actually on the audio channels this year. Martin, stage and screen actor, fabulous guy I've known for a very long time. Gave a very candid, really, really interesting and very in-depth discussion, which I loved. It was very special to have him on, and I'm just delighted he was prepared to do it. Gary Deakin, former Army officer, but then also had his own share of major challenges post the Army, not least when he was managing director of Garda World UK, and all sorts of things went on in his life then that turned it upside down really. And again, really interesting to get those kind of insights, listen to what he has to say, because it's worth it. It really is worth it. And then my last guest of the year was just recently was Emma Henderson, who I've already mentioned, another airline pilot. She was a former captain with EasyJet, but also was the founder of a thing called Project Wingman, which was where the airline industry came together to effectively provide first-class lounges, if you like, for respite for National Health Service staff during the COVID-19 pandemic. And some of the insights from her, absolutely brilliant. Amazing lady doing some incredible stuff and now out on the speaking circuit very actively and talking about all those experiences. So across the board, an amazing list of guests. It was so privileged to have have all those guests and get what they had to offer, and I just thank them all for their time, for their thoughts in terms of what they offered, because it's just gold dust, absolute gold dust to be in that position. Other things that have happened. So this year we went on video. I've been talking about that for some time with various people. Initially, my kind of perspective was, why would you want to watch me or watch me talking to somebody else or a couple of somebody else's and not just listen to it? Because I kind of thought that, well, is it really video wise interesting? And clearly it is. People like doing it. They like the body language. They like the facial expressions. They like what they get from it. So I continue to do it now on video and on audio. So if you're listening to any episode post July this year, then you'll actually find it's available on YouTube as well as a video. So I've been basically doing that since then, and I'll continue that. I still don't have adverts. I still don't have sponsors, and it is a challenge. I make no bones about that, to keep it free and to justify the time. It does take a considerable amount of time to put this together, both in the preparation stage, but also obviously the recording, the editing, etc. I love it. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm doing my absolute best to keep it in the same space. But I'm also aware that there's a significant amount of cost of living challenges and affordability challenges for people out there. But if you possibly can, please think about joining me on Patreon and being a subscriber to the show. It costs you, if you're at the supporter level, £3 a month to get the content that I'm providing, which is kind of a cup of coffee, less than a cup of coffee actually, from any kind of high street outlet. And I really would appreciate it if you're up for doing that. I've got a few free subscribers on Patreon, and I've got quite a lot of people who listen. We're well over 20,000 downloads. We're in 105 countries, so the podcast is doing really, really well. But I would love it just to have that little bit of extra oomph in terms of being self-financing in a better way to justify the time, particularly, that goes into it. So if you're up for that, please, please, please do it. Don't sort of continue to think, oh yeah, that might be a good thing to do. Actually, just jump on it now. Get onto the support the show link in the show notes that'll accompany this on either YouTube or on your podcast platform, or just go direct to www.patreon.com/leadingforlife. And you'll find me, and you can sign up either as a supporter at £3 a month, or a champion at £7 a month, or a patron at £10 a month. And any one of those will make a fabulous difference to what I do. So if you're getting plenty from this and you think about it, it's worth it, and you'd pay for the content if you're buying a magazine or looking at some kind of paywall in place, then please do help me out with that. That would be massively appreciated. As I look forward into 2026, my sort of personal emphasis in terms of what I do for paid work is firmly around more training and continuing to do what I do. And you'll see regularly, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I do a lot with Deloitte University. I've also recently started working with a company called MCE, Management Center Europe, and done some work out in Saudi Arabia for them. So that's been great, and I love doing that work. I really love the kind of give back opportunity that's there from the training, and I'm firmly fixed on doing as much of that as I can, really, with whoever I can get the work with. And I also do some individual work with with people too. I mentioned KWC Global, who I'm going back out to Denmark with in February and April this year. So that's typically a chunk of what I do, but just occasionally I get people who come and say, come and do training work direct, and I'm delighted to do that and build programs for them, and that is really, really great if the opportunity is there. So if that's a need you have and there's an opportunity there, please don't hesitate to get in touch. If you value what you're hearing from me, you think I can add some value to you and your organization, then jump on that opportunity. Give me a shout, and I'll be very happy to have a conversation about what I can do for you. I'm very much looking forward and trying very hard to do more speaking work in 2026. I love doing it. I think I've got a lot to add with that, and obviously just on the personal stories side. Again, if you think that it's something that would resonate with your organization somewhere, or with any kind of group that you're affiliated to, and you would like me to come and speak, then let's have a conversation about it, because I absolutely love doing it. and I really would be appreciative of any further opportunities that people can put my way in that space, because obviously, I'm still in the making a living thing here, and therefore, I'm keen to exploit to some extent the podcast opportunity to build that and build my brand a bit through it. So if you see that as an opportunity for you, I'd be really appreciative if you can help me. On the podcast front, I've already got a great list of interviewees lined up. I'm clearly going to continue with the personal stories and the themes along the same sort of lines as I've been going. And my absolute intention is that season 4 will be at least as good as season 3 in terms of quantity, quality, etc. And we'll be doing exactly the same things. So if you are not already a subscriber on YouTube or on whichever platform you use, or you're not following or supporting or doing whatever that platform requires, please do that right now. Okay, it really makes a difference to have subscribers on any of these platforms, because that gets the podcast more visibility, gets it more in a better place on search engines, etc., which gets it exposed better. And that all helps, because more listeners is good. I mean, I think some of the guests alone that I've had justify a very big audience. They really are worthy of a lot of people listening to the great insights they've provided. So if you're in that place, then please do that. And the other thing I'd say is, please send me some feedback, because I love the feedback. I really enjoy getting thoughts from people, ideas from people, critique from people. If there's stuff you think I could do differently, do better, do more, do less, then please let me know, because I'm really, really up for that, and I would really value having having that kind of dialogue about what you're getting from it. Because obviously, for me, I'm producing a product here, kind of blind at the moment. I really would like to know more, that what you like and what you don't like, what you're particularly on the kind of different angles that I've got, the personal stories, the themes, and the guests. Share your thoughts. If you think things are particularly good, or you think things are particularly not good, I'm very up for that. So don't worry about me offending my feelings. I'll be very, very kind of, I've got broad shoulders on this. I can take the feedback. So I'd be delighted to hear whatever you've got. So please do send it in. I think all that remains for me to say is, 2026 is looming large in the headlights now. Next week, obviously, as we get into New Year, as this episode goes out, and I wish each and every one of you, if you're listening to this or watching this, a very, very great New Year celebration, and more importantly, in some ways, a happy, healthy, and successful New Year. And may 2026 bring everything that you hope it's going to do. Please look after yourselves, look after your families, your teams, look after the people that work for you, and make sure you're doing the absolute best you can to have the best life you can. You're only here once, so enjoy it. No regrets. Just keep going forward and loving what you do, and have a fantastic year ahead of you. Thank you very, very much if you're a regular listener. If you're an occasional listener, thank you also. Please become a regular listener. That would be great. And I really, really look forward to more of these kind of conversations in 2026. Thanks a lot. Bye now.